There is a reason that God has taken me through such a strange path that most people don't understand. And I went through years of criticism over my calling to live this way from God. But most people didn't know the secret reasons why it all started. Instead of defending myself, I just let them talk of things they knew not about. I've always wanted to protect the privacy of why I had to walk in such a different way. I was protecting someone that meant the world to me, and it was not worth worrying about what other people would think. A long time ago, there were tragic things that happened. And someone that I care for developed a problem that kept me from going to work like a normal person. And I had to deny myself many things, such as relationships or going places that most people have and do. It was a deeply sensitive thing, and I couldn't go get government help as so many would have also. I knew I had to trust God for this very unique and delicate situation, and I didn't fit the mold of the requirements that most organizations use to help. I couldn't meet all of their guidelines and their rules. I was different, and my situation was highly unique, and I had no way to support my family or save myself. And so I prayed about what I should do, and I was desperate for God to save me. Without going into the details too much, I've had to make adjustments in my life in order to help this person. Everything has been so much harder for me, and if it wasn't for God's personal love to support us, I would have never survived this. I remember one day before I started this blog, I was in a library getting things for homeschool plans, and I was trying to think of what I could do to earn money while still being at home to help the kids and to handle this delicate need that someone had. And then God spoke to me and he said, "Write." And after I got home, I felt like there was electricity shooting through my body. I was full of excitement because I felt like I had unlocked my passion for life. The Holy Spirit led me to start the blog that I am now reading on YouTube as well. And I was praying about what to call it. And not long after, I went to a Sunday morning church and I got really lost in a deep place of worship. I bowed to my knees with tears in my eyes, and I was worshiping God as the love of my life. And for a moment, I had the sense to open my eyes, and on the carpet next to my feet, there was a diamond, a shimmering diamond. And from there, I was inspired to call this blog and ministry and my website Diamonds from the Dust to start. I was reminded of that when I recently was walking down a stairwell and I saw a sparkly diamond on a dirty floor. I was so in awe of God's intentional love to support us and all He's done. Back when God was helping me set up the blog, He gave me a promise that He would support us abundantly through my blog. And He said through a prophetic person that I could have my cake and eat it too. God showed me this meant that I could enjoy taking care of my special needs person and still be able to have a good income from writing. And the Lord made it clear to me over the years that writing for Him is my job and that He would divinely compensate me for it. But it has taken an extreme amount of faith and trust. And ever since I started this blog and I basically jumped off a cliff and took my family to a hotel when we were homeless with no money and no car, God held us up in His promise and He supported us in ways that often don't make sense and not in a way that most people would think. Sometimes it comes through donations. And sometimes when people are not very giving, God shows up in other ways as well. He showed up in grants or financial surprises and blessings. And in just strange, unique ways. At one time more than once, I got a little lost and took my attention off His promise to support us through my blog, and I started to frantically look for ways to earn compensation, and when I was still being at home with the situation I have. And then deep in the night, God said to me, "You know I don't want you to work." And then He gave me a promise of massive waves of blessings to come and help cover our needs. And He gave me strategies that He wanted me to use, such as doing the personal love letters that I offer on my blog and the courses that I offer on my blog, which is at diamondsfromthedust.com. It was such a gift to receive this promise from God, because it has often calmed my worries and given me a deep sense of expectation to have trust and faith. And back in May, God had shown me there was a massive attack coming against me, and the plan that the enemy had for my life is that I would not survive. And I was shown this raging sea with waves so huge they could destroy anything. However, there was a huge wall that protected those waves from touching me, and God told me I was in His safe house of protection from the raging storm. And then God gave me a promise that we would not be hungry or go without a home. He said it was like the beginning when we first started our journey to travel with God. However, it was much worse because we were at the end, which is beautiful because I can finally finish this book. The faith tests I've been going through as of recently are all to write this book that God's having me write, a second book of miracle testimonies of His life-saving love. The first book is called Naked Wings, and it's available on my website, and it's extremely detailed and raw and very profound. This journey will finally end as I get through this last section and I can start a brand new life. There was a book I read that it looked like this girl could die, and it reminded me of my situation. A flood was coming to their desert home, and she had no way to escape the terrors ahead. She could see no possible way she could get through, and it seemed like she would die. And that's honestly where I have been, like right now. It looks like there's no way, and I have to pour all of my trust into God to keep His promise. Then someone spoke to the girl and said, "Many waters cannot quench love." And it spoke of God's love for her and how God would not allow her to die. And according to the plans of darkness, I am supposed to die. But obviously God has plans for my life, and those plans is what will prevail. Thankfully, God has made those plans out of His love, and He will save us from every curse and every attack. Because mightier than the waves of the sea is God's love for me, and you also. For those of you who know our story, we began following God in this major life-altering trust fall about 7 years ago. I was on the verge of being homeless with no way to save myself, and God showed up and revealed Himself as our hero. And He gave me a promise to be our lifeline of support as we followed Him wherever He led us to go. And it's required total obedience, which is much harder than it sounds. You can read about that on our story and in my book at my website. And our journey's been full of more miracles than I can write about, but it's also been filled with facing the worst fears in my life, being baptized in my own tears, and meeting Jesus in the midst of it all. It is ugly and beautiful. It is bitter and sweet. Not only that, but it is exactly what makes a true fairy tale story good, and someday the whole thing will be an unforgettable story of true romance with God. It has been overwhelmingly lately because the waves of resistance against our promise from God has been really tough to endure. Sometimes it looks like there's no way to eat or have refuge, and God has given us His word that He will hold us above the flood that wants to take out our lives. However, God has never failed us, and not once did He ever let us fall to the ground, go without food, or sleep one night without the comforts of refuge, which has always been a hotel or Airbnb. It's always been extra generous from God, but it came with the cost of following God's ways and not my own. I had to draw finances that we need out of His promise by faith, and I had to expose myself by sharing the details with those who He called to read or hear about our story. The fact that we are finally towards the end of this journey is a relief of itself. That means we'll finally be lifted above every single moment of struggle and the resistance of our promises from God. That means I will be able to give back in a new way and bless those who've been so generous with me over the years. At the end of the journey is where the castle and the happily ever after are found, and my true love story can finally come out, and I'm so eager to know about it. However, I've been walking through a very aggressive storm that is trying to keep us out of all God promised. I have had to press myself to believe His promise to support us even more than I ever have lately. It's been intense, but it also made me thankful to those who have stood by my side and loved us through it. And I just thank God for you, and I keep praying that you will be remarkably blessed and repaid for your love that you've shown us. The storm was very aggressive even before we left Michigan for the unfamiliar place where we are now. I had to face so many close calls where we almost didn't have food or a home, and during those times I'd have to tell myself over and over, mightier than the waves of the sea is God's love for me. It has often felt like I've been drowning and bashed by waves, but it was a relief every time God saved us. It is so exhausting to go through. There was one night I had all I could take, and I expected it all to be over, and I expected that this would have been easier by now. And I cried myself to sleep, and when I was sleeping, God touched my shoulder to wake up. And He led me to read the book of Exodus in the Bible, and He showed me that He pulled me out of the waters like Moses. He said this is a time of massive buildup, like when Moses had to face Pharaoh to let God's people go. And during that time there were a series of plagues, and Pharaoh refused to let God's people go to where God was taking them to. Until the time came when Passover came and people waited for God's release to go with their shoes on and their bags fully packed. They celebrated as they waited because they knew that they were moving into a land with overflowing milk and honey. My safe house is like their safe house, where the blood of the Lamb protected God's people from the curses that came over the land. My curses were often the negativity and slander from the witchcraft that tried to turn others away from following this blog with bad thoughts and gossip and false reports. And thankfully God will turn it all around, and I just have to rest in that. So I've been ready to leave and ready for God to show up as He promised, to show His glorious power to us, to go where He's taken us next. It's a high and wonderful place where the abundance never ends, and where this story is finally finished and a new story begins. Yet no matter how overwhelming it feels, I put my trust in God's promise, because surely He has the power to honor His words. We are celebrating our Exodus during this time, and we are preparing to encounter the glory of God like never before, as He raises us up higher than a dream. God said that He would deliver double the comfort to make up for the pain of all I had to endure, and I'm thankful for that this is finally going to be ending and I can move into something entirely new. God keeps showing me that it'll be everything, everywhere, all at once, and the promise will suddenly be fulfilled with blessings attached to us from every angle. And it's a relief to finally turn the page and change the narrative I've had no choice but to walk through. I'm not a victim anymore. I'm refusing to have that mindset. I'm not subject to my circumstances because I am rock solid in God's promise and in the palm of His hand. But being in God's will is not the easiest thing to do. But He has promised us that the rewards will be better than gold. And I'm looking forward to sharing an update with you from the clouds as God shows up like He vowed to lift us up to heights too wonderful to put into words. That's just a taste of some of the intensity of things that have gone on, and I'm thankful that the story is almost over and I can start something new with God, and a new love will bloom and the keys to our home are finally revealed. No amount of warfare can drown out God's love and His promise to save. No amount of hatred towards me or you or the curses from my enemies can take me out of God's safe house. That's not just for me, but it's all who put their faith in God to trust Him to be the safe house from the raging storm. As if going through all these constant faith tests from God, for God to rescue us with daily room refuge and food support, and using my faith to draw out God's promise were not enough to go through already. I had another massively important and very unexpected trouble show up just before Christmas, like the time when most people are needing the most money for, the holiday spending, and when we were just trying to have the money that we needed for hotel prices and food and etc. And when I started this journey with God, I had 2 middle school children with me, and I was a single parent. And since that time, they've grown and flourished, and God led us to the city we're currently staying in because one of my daughters was accepted into her dream college. And even with all the moving over the years and all the difficulties that were against us, she graduated from her homeschool high school in the top 10% of her class with honors. And she was even awarded a presidential scholarship to college, despite having to face such severe difficulties with our living situation. And this summer we moved her into her dorm, and she was even granted a special privilege of having a dorm to herself. And she's been thriving in her new environment. And now it's just me and my youngest daughter going through this journey with God, but I still have the unique situation that I spoke of earlier that has given me no choice but to depend on God's promise to be our income. I didn't realize that my college daughter would end up on a faith test of her own. I found out just before Christmas unexpectedly that she needed $10,000 in a matter of only 5 days, or she would have to leave school and her new little home at her dorm. And I was so distraught, and so was she, and neither of us could sleep from all the worry and pressure. I didn't know how God was going to cover our food and room needs, and let alone needing $10,000 in only a matter of days. Yet, like the eagle using the storm winds to be lifted high, God led me and my daughter to believe that He would deliver this $10,000 by some sort of miracle. I even received a personal love letter from God with a promise to deliver this miracle need. And I was trying not to panic because I had no space to take her back right now with all her new dorm things, and she would have had to been utterly heartbroken to have to leave. We decided to trust God's promise and not how impossible it looks, and the opposition really brought out my daughter's faith in a phenomenal way as well. And I was not expecting what happened next. We received an email, and my daughter had been awarded a special one-time scholarship of almost $8,000 for her tuition, and she was awarded another $4,000 as well. And her dorm scholarship was increased too. From the most impossible need imaginable in such a difficult time, God did the unexpected and rescued my daughter, and He stepped in just not a minute too late. And because of all the weird other college fees that were added, I still needed a few $1,000s. And I was running out of time, so she had to register for her classes. And time was running out, and I was still in a faith test for that last little bit. And this was all just before Christmas. And of course, just to add to the complexity of things, I had gotten really, really sick. And I don't think I'd been that sick since I was a child with a near-death experience. And one night I was burning up with a fever and crying through the night in discomfort. It was like a flu, but worse. And I had a nonstop fever, and my throat hurt so bad I was in tears. And I was so tired I could barely stand, along with more symptoms that I'm not going to go through. But then during that, the Lord spoke to me so clearly, and He said, "I will touch your weakness with my power." And then He started to give me words for a prophetic letter to go with that. And I got up immediately to write it out before I forgot it all. And the love letter, if you want to look for it on my website, diamondsfromthedust.com, was called, there's a search bar at the top and you can write the words in. It's called "Plan to Receive a Sudden Visitation from Me." The next morning I woke up after that extreme sickness and incredible encounter with God, and I woke up to a miracle. God sent me enough money to cover the whole month of December for us to stay in a hotel and the rest of my daughter's dorm to our school tuition that she needed so desperately. And it was like perfect, because I was too sick and tired to carry the burden of stress or have to exercise my faith. And there was enough to cover our room into the new year, and some other bills too. And it was so unexpected. And God moved through the weakness of the attack against my health to bless us with so many miracles all in one. Basically, God gave my daughter a miracle for far over $10,000 to cover her tuition in an incredibly short amount of time. He finished supplying the miracle through this last surprise miracle. It was miracle upon miracle. And I'm so thankful, far beyond what words can express, to know that we could spend the whole month of December in a place of refuge for the holiday season until the beginning of the new year was the greatest comfort in the world. Especially since I'd still been in a place of physical weakness from being so sick, and I was not able to really engage my faith in a way that God has always shown me to do, which I actually put into courses, the Dream Diamond course and the Hope Repose course, where I share the secrets that God's given me to pull off these crazy miracles. And God's been so attentive to our needs, and when we think we are weak, that is what makes us strong. Our place of dishonor, of need, of weakness, the place where you have a problem, is a place where God will show up in power. That's where His glory pours out. So actually, the more needy you are, the more in position you are to have a miracle from God. And I just want to put this last little thing out there. Expect the unexpected, because God has got so many surprises coming out, and it's going to take you by surprise, and it's going to be miracle upon miracle and upon miracle of unexpected gifts from God. And I'm so excited to see what this next new year brings for both our story and for your life as well. I love you so much. This is Dannette from Diamonds from the Dust, and I hope you'll come see my blog or website soon and explore all the things that I have on there for you. I love you.